Welcome to the long view. So, you hear it all the time, right? Powerful countries like the US or Australia will come out and declare some other government illegitimate. It sounds so final, so official, like a judge handing down a ruling from on high. But what if it's not a ruling at all?
Because the second you start to look just a little bit closer, that whole sense of official certainty it kind of falls apart. When you scratch the surface, a really troubling question starts to pop up, one that gets right to the heart of how power actually works in our world.
And that's our big question for today. Who actually gets to decide that? Is there some kind of official referee in global politics making these calls, or is something else going on entirely? To get to the bottom of this, we first need to take a quick look back, because the rulebook for what makes a government legit has changed a lot over the years.
For the longest time, the rule was actually super simple. Back after the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, it basically came down to this. If you controlled your territory, you were legit. End of story. But then, after World War II, the UN Charter added a whole new layer: human rights. Suddenly, that was a global issue. And today, well, we hear things like democracy and human rights used all the time as the standard. The goalposts have definitely moved.
And this is where things get really tricky. The UN Charter, which is basically the foundation of modern international relations, pulls in two opposite directions. On one hand, it fiercely protects national sovereignty, says you can't just interfere. But on the other hand, it makes human rights everyone's business. This creates this perfect gray area, and it lets powerful countries pick and choose which principle they want to champion at any given moment.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Are these new, more moral-sounding rules actually applied fairly to everyone? Or is there, a bit of a double standard going on? Let's investigate. Okay, case in point. Iran. Western powers constantly call out its government, labeling it illegitimate for its human rights record and its undemocratic system. Fair enough. But now look at Saudi Arabia, an absolute monarchy. Also a very close strategic partner that buys billions of dollars in weapons from those same Western powers. By the same standards applied to Iran, it should be on the list too. But it's not.
And this isn't a one-off. Look at Venezuela. A disputed election leads to its government being called illegitimate pretty quickly. Meanwhile, in Egypt, a military coup gets rid of a democratically elected government, and what happens? The new guys get full recognition and aid. It really seems like the key factor isn't democracy, it's whether you're aligned with the right powers.
But maybe the most telling example of all is China. A few decades ago, criticism of its government was loud. It was constant. And today, the volume has been turned way, way down. What changed? Well, China became an economic powerhouse, too important to alienate. It shows that this label of legitimacy isn't some fixed moral judgment. It's a status that can change based on, strategic interests.
Okay, so let's take a breath. The evidence shows pretty clearly that these rules are not applied consistently at all. So that brings us back to our big mystery. If it's not about objective principles, then who is making the call?
The answer is almost shockingly simple. These declarations of illegitimacy, they're unilateral. They are purely political statements made by one country about another. They have zero actual force in international law. There's no court, no judge, no jury. It's just one powerful country, or a group of them, making a claim and hoping it sticks.
Now, to give these statements some extra weight, to make them sound more official, you'll hear a very specific phrase get thrown around a lot: the international community. It's a fantastic bit of PR, really. It creates this illusion that the whole world is on board.
But this chart right here just blows that myth out of the water. When you hear the international community, what it almost always means is the United States and its key allies. We're talking maybe 50 countries, give or take. That's a powerful bloc, for sure, but it's hardly the consensus of the nearly 200 nations on this planet.
So why are we spending all this time on one little word? Because this isn't just about semantics. Labeling a government illegitimate isn't just talk. It has very real, sometimes devastating consequences. It's a word that fundamentally changes the game. Honestly, think of it like a magic word. The moment a country is slapped with the illegitimate label, it's like its sovereignty just poof, it disappears. All the normal rules of the road in international relations, like not meddling in another country's internal affairs, suddenly they don't seem to apply anymore.
In fact, there's a whole playbook. Step 1, you declare the target illegitimate. Step 2, that declaration becomes the perfect justification for sanctions, which can absolutely cripple a country's economy. Step 3, Interference, like funding opposition groups, gets a makeover. Now it's just defending democracy. And in the most extreme cases, step 4, it makes war, actual military intervention, a thinkable option.
And that's the real danger here. This whole system replaces actual, established international law, treaties, the UN Charter, all that stuff, with purely political declarations. It makes the world a much more arbitrary, much more unpredictable place where the whims of the powerful matter more than the rules.
So if the system we have now is so messy and, frankly, so driven by power politics, is there a better way? I mean, let's be honest. Some governments are genuinely terrible. The dilemma is very real. So what's the alternative?
Well, a few ideas have been floated. We could try to give more power to bodies like the UN General Assembly. Or we could try to create some really clear criteria and then, and this is the hard part, actually apply them to everyone, including allies. Or maybe we just need to be more honest and call these declarations what they are, political tools, not moral judgments. Yeah, none of those are exact easy fixes.
Because when you boil it all down, the honest answer to our original question is this: powerful countries decide, and they decide based on their interests. The hypocrisy, the inconsistency we've been talking about, that's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. Flexible standards are just much more useful to powerful nations than rigid principles ever could.
And that really leaves us with one last, really tough question to chew on. In a world with such a massive imbalance of power, is it even possible to have universal standards? Can we ever have one set of rules that truly applies to the weak and the strong in the exact same way? That, right there, is the fundamental problem at the heart of all this.